was a day like any other. The sun hung high over the city of Atlanta, Georgia, on a warm afternoon in late September. But in just 5 minutes, everything would change. A routine traffic stop would turn into a moment that would shock the nation. A moment that would force us to ask, how far can prejudice go before it destroys everything in its path? And what happens when the truth is far more complicated than it seems? This is the story of Officer Daniel Grayson, a 12-year veteran of the Atlanta Police Department, and Keisha Johnson, a 28-year-old nurse and mother of 2. Their paths crossed on a quiet street corner at 3:17 p.m. What happened next would be captured on a shaky cell phone video, viewed millions of times, and debated endlessly. But what you think you know is only half the story. Let's rewind. To understand this moment, we need to look at the lives of these 2 individuals before that fateful day. Keisha Johnson was a woman who had spent her life fighting against the odds. Born and raised in the heart of Atlanta, she grew up in a neighborhood where opportunities were scarce. But her determination was not. She worked 2 jobs to put herself through nursing school, all while raising her 2 young children. Her co-workers described her as a beacon of hope, someone who always had a smile even on the hardest days. On the other side of the city, Officer Daniel Grayson was preparing for his shift. A former Marine, Grayson had joined the police force with a sense of duty, a desire to protect and serve. But over the years, something had changed. His colleagues noticed it, a growing bitterness, a tendency to see the world in black and white, literally. Grayson had been reprimanded twice for racially charged comments, but both times the complaints were dismissed. Just words, they said. He's a good cop. But words have power, and sometimes they lead to actions. At 3:12 p.m., Keisha Johnson was driving home from her shift at Grady Memorial Hospital. She was tired, but her mind was already on the evening ahead, helping her son with his homework, cooking dinner, maybe even catching up on her favorite show. But as she turned onto Peachtree Street, flashing lights appeared in her rearview mirror. She pulled over, confused. She hadn't been speeding. Her tags were up to date. So why was she being stopped? And then, the cops came to ask if she was driving between the lanes. Officer Grayson approached the vehicle, his hand resting on his holster. Keisha rolled down her window, her heart pounding. "License and registration," he barked. She complied, her hands visibly trembling. What happened next was captured on a bystander's phone. Grayson's tone grew aggressive. He accused Keisha of resisting, though she hadn't moved. He ordered her out of the car. When she hesitated, he yanked the door open and dragged her onto the pavement. The video shows her pleading, "Why are you doing this? I didn't do anything wrong." But Grayson wasn't listening. He handcuffed her, his knee pressing into her back as she cried out in pain. The video spread like wildfire. Outrage erupted. Protests filled the streets. Grayson was suspended and an investigation was launched. But here's where the story takes a turn no one saw coming. 5 minutes after the incident, as Keisha sat in the back of the patrol car, something unexpected happened. Grayson's radio crackled to life. "All units be advised, we have a 1078 officer in distress. Shots fired at 1425 Peachtree Street." Grayson froze. That was his address. His wife and daughter were home. Without a word, he sprinted back to his car, leaving Keisha behind. She watched in stunned silence as he sped away, sirens blaring. Later, we would learn the truth. Grayson's home had been targeted by a man he had arrested years earlier, a man who had just been released from prison. The man had broken in, armed and dangerous. Grayson's wife managed to call 911, but by the time backup arrived, it was too late. The intruder had shot Grayson's daughter before turning the gun on himself. She survived, but barely. In that moment, everything changed. The man who had been so quick to judge, so quick to act out of anger, was now the one begging for mercy. And Keisha? She could have pressed charges. She could have let the world condemn him. But she didn't. Instead, she visited him in the hospital. She sat by his side and said, "I forgive you." Keisha's act of forgiveness didn't erase what happened. It didn't excuse Grayson's actions. But it did something far more powerful. It reminded us all of our shared humanity. Grayson resigned from the force and dedicated his life to fighting racial bias in law enforcement. Keisha became an advocate for police reform, using her story to spark change. This story isn't just about a racist cop or a black woman. It's about the choices we make in our darkest moments. It's about the power of forgiveness, even when it seems impossible. And it's a reminder that sometimes the truth is more complicated than it appears. If this story moved you, if it made you think, then don't let it end here. Share it, talk about it. Subscribe to this channel for more stories that challenge, inspire, and remind us of the world we live in. And in the comments below, tell us, what would you have done in Keisha's shoes, or Grayson's? Let's keep the conversation going, because change starts with us.